Hey everybody, welcome back to another video about geology and media. Today we're going to be talking about video games, and more specifically, we'll be revisiting the Destiny 2 universe. Now, in my last video on the game, we talked about the planet Mercury, which is a fun challenge to research. This time, we're going to be focusing on the moon, Earth's moon, which is the setting for the new DLC Shadowkeep. Having played this DLC since it launched back in October, I really liked it. I never really got to play the original Destiny, so I can't compare it to that version, but from what I can see, it represents the moon pretty spot on. Of course, I'm not counting the massive chasms and crevices caused by the Hive invasion, which to my knowledge hasn't happened yet in real life. Like me at first, you may wonder how could anybody possibly mess up recreating the moon? All they need to do is just add a bunch of craters and a moon base and call it a day, right? Well, no, not really. The moon is a bit more particular than that, especially if you're considering the terrain. The moon is divided up into what we'd call Maria, which is plural from mare, and the highlands. If you look at any picture of the moon, you can see the distinction pretty clearly. The dark portions are what we'd call the Maria, which are large, dark basaltic plains formed by ancient volcanic eruptions, much of it being basaltic in composition with more mafic minerals and therefore darker coloration in comparison to the highlands, which I'll get into in a bit. The near side of the moon, which we can see from Earth, contains the majority of Maria on the moon, which only takes up about 16% of the lunar surface. If you go to the far side, there's not really much at all. So taking that into mind, we're not on the lunar Maria for Shadowkeep. That leaves us with the highlands, named as such due to the higher elevation in comparison to the Maria, and is a heavily battered older region of lighter color due to its composition, primarily made up of anorthosite, which is mainly made up of a felsic mineral called plagioclase feldspar. Contrary to what we see on Earth, anorthosite is a much lighter and has a much more distinct ratio of sodium to calcium, and are very fine-grained with little room for large phenocrysts to develop, unlike what we see on Earth. On top of that, if you were to do a comparison between the two regions, the highlands are much more cratered than the Maria, of course due to the age of both regions, and that checks out with what we see in-game as well. If you take a peek at any of these clumps of lunar rock in the game, the powdery white color you find along with the terrain of the surrounding area leads me to believe that the game is taking place at some location on the near side of the moon's lunar highlands. And as far as for the caves that we're seeing in the game, you might also wonder whether or not those are natural too. A lot of them have the design of hive architecture, but some are also pretty normal. Unfortunately, while the moon does have caves of a sort, they wouldn't really be found in the lunar highlands and wouldn't form in a way that we think of on Earth. Let me explain. When we think of a cave on Earth, we have to think about the rock that it forms in. Here, on Earth, it's typically limestone that's been chemically weathered by rainwater over extremely long periods of time. On the moon, and as I've already discussed, there's no limestone there, which is mainly made up of calcium carbonate, or calcite and aragonite. There, the caves are already tunnels made up of basaltic lava flows that creates tubes that are generally covered by overlaying lava. The unfortunate part is that they are, from what I've gathered from observational data, mostly found in Maria only. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that they're probably all produced by the Hive, at least in-game, not via natural processes like on Earth. Besides all that, there's not really much else to talk about. I mean, I can't really talk about the realistic gravity in the game, since you got the suit pretty much making it even throughout all areas of the game, and then terraforming on top of that, also changing things up. I mean, there's also the Earth, which I can quickly talk about. Realistically, even taking into consideration the position that we would be on geographically on the moon, the Earth really wouldn't appear that large. So I guess it's more of a design choice more than anything. It's a little cool that you can see the blue hue indicative of our atmosphere, which technically isn't even that large from closer orbit, but it's not really a big deal. Just a little thing to point out as a footnote here. And if you guys have anything else that you want me to talk about in regards to the moon in Destiny 2 that I missed, you can feel free to ask me in the comments down below for further clarification. If you want to recommend me certain parts of the planets to talk about, or other games, movies, or shows in general, please feel free to do so. And if you like this content, please feel free to subscribe for more, and I'll see you all next time.